All right, y'all. So we actually have a pretty big team at the state level for Title I Part C, right? So just to introduce myself, I'm Zach Taylor. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a team lead for our, now what you heard Jules say this morning, our Student Advocacy, Access, and Support Team, so SAS, in the Office of Federal and State Accountability. We had some rebranding, formerly known as the DIA team. On our team, we have Title III Part A, multilingual learner children and immigrant children and youth. We have our McKinney-Vento program, we have our foster care, and then, of course, what we're going to talk about today, Title I Part C, Education of Migratory Children, or the Migrant Education Program. So, James?
Good afternoon. I'm James Cornelius. I am the Migrant Education Program Data Specialist. I also do a little bit of dabbling with the McKinney-Vento and foster care, as well as our students do tend to fall under that category, just depending on the situation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Victor Pacheco, and I'm the program specialist for the South Carolina Migrant Education Program.
We also have Emily Williams, who's our state identification and recruitment coordinator and services coordinator. She's not here today. Here in spirit, you maybe have spoken with her. Some of you may know her. She's very active in reaching out to districts as well. So we actually have another big part of our outreach team across the state too, right? So actually, I'm going to go ahead and call if that's okay. We have two of them here with us. Marcella, you want to introduce yourself over here?
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Marcela Hernandez. I work in Upstate. Cover 15 counties to be able to recruit and provide services to families.
Hi everyone, my name is Brenda. I'm the recruiter for the whole Love Country area from Jasper County all the way to Horry County.
Yeah. And then of course we have Darren, who's not here with us today, another family liaison in the Midlands region, and Allison Singer in the Low Country as a family liaison. So these are state level funded staff that we have that work with, as they were saying, big swaths of the state, but working with families, providing outreach, and working with districts too to support you all, supporting our migratory students and connecting with resources and whatnot. So, all right, so we're going to talk about what the Title I Part C program is, just an overview, kind of delve into the needs and some areas of concern identified by both us as a state, but also what our Office of Migrant Education as well, and the U.S. Department of Education, and then touch on a little bit of identification, not go too far in the weeds, but to give you an idea of what that looks like, and then on your end, what it looks like for eligible student lists that are coming your way and how to handle those. And then pay attention. I know we're after lunch, but we will test our knowledge, and we have special points that we're going to give you all after you get the right answers. So, absolutely. Yeah, so what is Title I Part C, right? So we are the smallest federal program out of the Every Student Succeeds Act, but nonetheless very important still, right? The Migrant Education Program. So you heard Tiffany talk this morning about the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. So back in late 1950s and of course in the 1960s, you had Lyndon B. Johnson talk about his Great Society Plan and the war on poverty. And our Title I Part C was an amendment to the original 1965 Elementary and Secondary Education Act. So we've been around with all the other titles and progressed in all the reauthorizations along the way. Of course, under No Child Left Behind, for example, in 2001, and then of course most recently on the Every Student Succeeds Act in 2015. It's a state-operated grant from the U.S. Department of Education, which means that unlike your Title I Part A and your Title III Part A and the other title programs, we are a formula grant, but there's discretion given to the state to how to allocate funds and to whom to allocate subgrants, right? So, for example, we do not have a cap on state-level activities, which is why we have a bigger staff at the state level to help conduct state-mandated identification and recruitment. But we also subgrant out as well. We have an application that comes out around April each year. And we actually have a couple subgrantees in the House too that can recognize. So Charleston, we have Charleston Migrant Education Historic Program and also Colleton Migrant Education Program. I don't know how many years exactly, but I want to say over 20 to 30, over 30 years probably. They've been applying for that subgrant. So we have some knowledge in the House for sure. Yeah. So another interesting thing is that there's in our statute for Title I Part C, we talk about records transfer and even health information, right? So there's a lot of overlap with the support services and advocacy needed for migratory students, and then making sure that our students are not penalized as they move, across district lines or across state lines. A lot of our students, when Victor will talk about areas of concern, they move 4 to 5 schools a year, and between 2 to 3 states a year on top of that, within that. So, but yeah, we, primarily, like James will tell you, transfer records, whether they're even health records or just education records, and through M6, a federal database across state lines to other states around the country. So it's a big federal initiative for records transfer, and then ensuring that our students aren't penalized as due to the mobility. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means, mobility for us. So who are migratory students? I think like the best way to describe it without getting too in the weeds is if you are also over McKinney-Vento or even foster care, you know how nuanced every situation is for potential identification, right? We're talking about children of mobile farm workers or youth as well, or youth that are doing the farm work themselves and might be out of school, right? So to clarify, I know there's a lot of information out there outside of the public education system. We're public education servants, right? All of us, we work in public education. Migrant to us is not the same thing as immigrant, and it's not necessarily the same thing as Hispanic either, right? So when we use the term migrant or migratory, we're talking about kind of two main things that determine that eligibility. So mobility, right? And then former or current work in qualifying activities, so agricultural or fishing work, right? So just important to remember that, like, Victor was saying that a lot of our students wear different hats from different subgroups. So, over 80% of the students are conditionally eligible for McKinney-Vento, almost, for example. Over 90% of our students are also ML, for example. They overlap, right? Migrant can be also immigrant, also ML, also foster, but it's its own thing within statute as well, right? And it's not has nothing to do with coming from one country to the other. It's about mobility and agricultural work, right? So speaking of mobility, these are just historic kind of movements for many years, if not hundreds of years, in terms of migratory farm worker movement across the nation. On the left-hand side, you can see the western migratory stream kind of working in the California area, going up to Washington as the as the months progress over time, and then coming back down and doing that circle. Seeing Texas being a big base hub state for seasonal migration, working farm work across the calendar year. And then we're on the eastern stream, we call it. These streams are thinning, and as we progress and as we continue as a nation to import more fruits and vegetables and have a shifts in our agricultural the workforce, they kind of are thinning out, but they're still there. We still see them each summer. Selena and Tamika can tell you, in Colleton and the Low Country, Charleston and Beaufort, we have big groups of people moving through with our tomato and watermelon crops. In the Midlands, we have, of course, our peaches and pine straw workers and vegetables, all kinds of different stuff. And in the upstate, I know that's kind of thinning out a little bit too, but there was always historically tomatoes up there, even peaches at one point. Marcelo knows up there. But you can see kind of where the concentrations of our migratory students are. In South Carolina, you really can actually overlay it pretty well, the right picture on with the left, with the streams of where these students are located. Just some numbers. So I mentioned that we're a smaller program, and that goes with the numbers of students, migratory students in South Carolina too. So you can see we had a kind of reorganization around in that 2020, actually July 2nd, 2020, we hired quite a few people on board that are still with us today. We really kind of revamped and we put identification of students at the forefront. And so we hovered around 900 to 960 kids per year, ages 3 through 21. And we had a drop last year, so we're right around 879 kids. Our goal is to increase identification, right? And we have a program goal of by 2026 to increase identification by 15%. So there are reasons why we looked into our data for that drop this past year. Part of it was staffing too, and we're looking to kind of work with you all more, with districts too, to get better insight and be able to identify more students. So identification is very important. You hear that from any program on our team. Similar data, just talk about numbers of eligible migratory students, whether they're ages 0 to 21, which we identify everybody, 0 to 21. We're only funded for 3-year-olds through 21-year-olds. You can see a drop in our summer services too, right? So Title I Part C statute places heavier weight in the formula if you have summer programs or intercession programs. And some of that, is due to, again, changes in our workforce, but also, staffing changes and nature as well, because we're dealing with farm work, right? And crops can not maybe not come as strong one year as they do the previous year. We don't have as many families or workers. So. Also, some diversity in there's some different languages, right? That we have our families represented in the data that we collect. The vast majority of our families are listing Spanish as their primary language, right? And I mentioned that not that all MLs, of course, we know don't only speak Spanish, but 90% of our students are also MLs, Title III ML students. And then you see we have some interesting indigenous languages listed here, which we always are really interested in, advocate for our families to keep speaking in the home and being, the power of being bilingual or even trilingual in some cases, our families. But like, so you see Acatec, that's an indigenous language from Guatemala. Afrikaans, which is the language from more and more workers coming from South Africa that are doing, I believe, what workers are the South Africans doing? Majorly. I want to say peaches, but yeah.
Some of them were also out in like the PD area during the tobacco season.
Yeah, tobacco crops. Yeah. So, then we have MAM from Guatemala, MAM, Kanhubal, Acatec again. Have any of you seen these languages in your district popping up? Yeah, maybe like Mixteco as well, Zapoteco. No? Yeah. So it presents additional opportunities really to go beyond just what we think of parents coming in for the front desk, and they might be communicating in Spanish for the first time, but that might actually be their second language too, as opposed to their native language at home, which could be an indigenous language, which I've seen more and more vendors pick up on and offer those translation interpretation services for languages I was surprised to see when it was great, with some of the vendors out there in terms of these indigenous languages. So just FYI. Yeah. All right, Victor.
I'll quickly go over 7 areas of concern. These are areas of concern that were identified by the Office of Migrant Education. They're like one of the agencies that somewhat oversee us. So these areas of concern, they're usually experienced by all of the migratory children nationwide. First one is educational continuity. Migrant students, they move multiple times a year. During the school year, we've had children that move like 4 times in one school year. So you can imagine like the change in curriculum, just like the change in general, making friends, academic standards. It's a lot for a child to take in. They can be in one school district talking about early history, and then move and the curriculum changes to like modern history. So that's a big gap missed with the move from one school district to another. Time for instruction is another area of concern. The more time that our students they spend on the road moving, the less time they spend in the classroom learning. A school engagement, goes along with like making new friends, also social acceptances. It affects their school engagement, which also impacts their behavioral engagement, emotional, and their cognitive engagement. Another area, as Zach mentioned earlier, over 90% of our kids, they're multilingual learners. Um, all of our kids, all of the kids in our program, English is like their second, third language. So we have to find ways to supplement, not supplant Title III program activities. Educational support at home. That's a big one. Studies show that when a parent spends 15 20 minutes a night reading with their kids before bed, that student is has a bigger chance of being successful in school. That's really a luxury that our students do not get. Many times, the parents of our kiddos they're pre-literate themselves, so the educational they don't really have much educational support in the home. Health is another big issue due to their legal status. Most of our population they don't qualify for like insurance through the Affordable Care Act or Medicaid, Medicare because of their legal status. So we really have to go above and beyond to get access to healthcare for our students. We do partner up with Migrant Health and just like local clinics that have like sliding fee scales or that have a migrant health program, so the kids can get access to healthcare. And access to services is another big area of concern. Just in general, it's very hard to get help in a language other than English for a lot of the services out there. Um, a lot of like our out of school youth, they have a hard time like activating phones when they get here. So access to services is a big issue that a lot of our population sees also. We try to overcome this by going to the camps where the OSY live, the out of school youth. Many of those are like H2A camps. That's a peach farm out in the image. So in these peach farms, like 100 to 200 guys will like live in like barracks type housing. So we'll usually find about like 5 to 10 kids that qualify for our program. So once they're eligible for our program, we'll go back to the camp, not every day, maybe like once a month, once every few weeks or so, and spend time going over mini ESOL lessons with them. Nothing difficult. We don't leave homework unless the OSY would like some homework, which isn't um, the case. But you know, we'll usually cover topics, vocabulary. We want our population to like know how to ask for a burger or pizza whenever they're hungry. Just vocabularies that can help them like activate a phone, maybe open up a bank account. So we'll go to the camps and do mini ESOL lessons for like 30 minutes, an hour, depending on the time that the OSY has. Sometimes we'll be there Sunday night before they go to their weekly trip to the grocery store.
These 7 areas of concern, they're also, that's how our sub-grants, those do apply. You know, we have three sub-grantees, but they're structured around these areas of concern, right? And like what you're saying, the real important thing and that we have in our sub-grant, outline and what's in regulations is meeting these students where they are, right? So outreach is key here, particularly with this access to services, just because of the pure isolation of the housing of our students a lot of the time. Right? So some data around graduation rate, migrant student versus state overall. You can see, it's not our lowest of the subgroups on our South Carolina report card, but it's a very low graduation rate in comparison to the state average, right, year to year, in the 60% range, 60% range. 21, 22 is still trying to figure that one out. Went up quite a bit. I don't know if that's an anomaly, COVID related or not, but generally over, even before 22 or sorry, 2019, 20, and before that, it has hovered between 55 to 65% or so graduation rate. We get a profile. I mentioned a federal database that we shoot student data into every night. All states do, called M6, Migrant Student Information Exchange. They give us a state profile each year to show, promotion. They're really concerned with Algebra 1, and rightfully so, right? And having that as an indicator, yes or no, by the time that a student reaches 9th grade, for example, or 10th grade, or sorry, 10th grade or 11th grade. But just showing promotion in general, right, for grades from 7th to 11th graders moving to 8th to 12th grade in our last performance period. I mean, that is a very striking statistic, in terms of promoting, like moving from one grade to the next for our secondary students. So I always put that one next to the graph on the left, or the bar chart on the left to show that promoting grades is a huge area of concern as we talk about the educational continuity. All right, James.
So before we dive into this, I want to check something right quick so everyone is, on top of everything. Can I get a volunteer? Can someone tell me what a migrant student is? I know we discussed it previously, but it's going to kind of lead back into this to make sure we're, all on the same page. Any volunteer to someone brave? What is a migrant student? Anyone? Takers?
move from district to district,
Mm-hmm.
and then and have to have previous or current work, the families in farming or fishing. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct. So,
So did I get it?
and state to state as well. That's correct. State to state. So, with that, let's say that again.
Is involved in farming or fishing at age 3 through 21.
Correct. And there we have it. So now we can get to the identification and great job, awesome job. So identifying our state, well, our migrant students has been, I guess, kind of difficult in terms of things. Well, in terms of that, when it comes to districts, sometimes our districts we tend to think that immigrant is migrant, and that's not the case. So we want to make sure that we're properly identifying our students. And again, this is how we identify our students. Eligibility is determined by our state staff, which 2 or 3 of them are here, our outreach staff. They go out into the field, they conduct the interviews. And these are basically the 3 essentially criteria that we've discussed that makes them eligible for the program. They cannot be older than the age of 21 and have not graduated high school or obtained a GED. On top of that, they have to make a qualifying move. They cannot live in the same, I guess you can say, district area for more than 36 months. Outside of that 36 months, anything after that deems them no longer eligible for the program. And then they also have to basically make their parents or the child has to be working in agricultural work or fishing as well. And if a certificate of eligibility is completed and they meet these criteria, then they qualify for our program. And not to confuse this with our enrollment survey. There are 2 questions on our enrollment survey. Everyone is familiar with the enrollment survey? Yes. Yes, there are 2 questions on there. It is for the family. It asks, have they made a qualifying move, and do they work in agricultural work? That does not qualify them for the program. All that is giving. You have a question? All that does is give us the idea of, okay, this family may fit this situation. In fact, I actually run a report in Power School that basically gives a yes or no for those indicators, whatever they answered on the enrollment survey. I then forward that information to our outreach program, and then they will go and conduct the interview based on those responses. I believe last month, I think it was, we tested it out, and I think we had 19 families that qualified for the program. So the survey has actually helped. It was thousands of records, but it actually helped identify some students. So it's doing exactly what we wanted to do.
Is there a question? Yeah.
I did have a question. And I'm trying to get the enrollment survey right now, but of course, okay, got it. I don't know if that part of the spouse is in the enrollment survey, because that is interesting. Because they might have the guardian not working there, but that spouse might not be guardian of the children. And it does, so I don't remember how to say it, maybe it was me, but I think that what it says is the guardian or the parent in agricultural, and it lists, it makes a list of the areas, but that spouse would give another.
You might open it up more for
I would say so, because maybe the spouse is not the same parent or the same guardian.
Yeah, and it's
if it makes sense.
Does anyone in your family work?
Yeah, anyone in your family.
Because has anyone in your family?
And the mobility question, I believe, have you or anyone in your family, I believe.
Has anyone in your family work?
Yeah. So but that's a good point though, because we operate on something called in locus parentis. A lot of times we do have family units that have different type of guardianship over kids, and we don't require. Title I Part C doesn't require any type of documentation for like custody and things like that. I know the districts might be different with that type of thing during enrollment, but when we're signing up with a COE, a certificate of eligibility, it's in locus parentis. And we understand that it happens a lot of time. You have big groups of people moving together, migration patterns. Really good point though. You could potentially look at that and how to capture more people potentially.
Because usually what you said, I mean, that does make sense because
Yeah.
the parent is, or somebody is filling it out for them. So
Yeah.
maybe saying, has anyone in the student's family moved?
Yeah, because that's right. Again, speaking to the broader unit, like the family unit or just the group. Okay. That's excellent.
So like we stated, difference between enrollment survey, COE. The COE then is approved once the interview is done and conducted or whatever. The COE is then approved by our state staff as well, and that says, hey, this student qualified for the program and they meet all the criteria. We can then move forward with that. What's going to happen after that? I then, and of course, to increase identification, communication, relationship with the districts, all of that plays a role in making sure that our students are being identified. Of course, you can go in Power School, mark them as code them as migrant. What we've noticed that typically districts improperly code the student because they see everything and they say, hey, this is a migrant student. Again, this is where our eligible student list comes into play. We have a database called MIS 2000. This stores all of our students that are actually approved for the program. I typically run a report, which we're at the end of the month. Right now is going to be dispersed at the end of each month that contains students that have been deemed eligible for our program. That information is sent out to the districts, which contains students for your district who have lived in that area, and due to mobility, guess what can happen? They can be gone before we even send the list. So we're leaning on you guys to help us say, hey, this student left and went to a different district, or this student is still in this district. And on top of everything, our student, of course, with the demographic of students that we're working with, we want to make sure that their name is spelled correctly, their date of birth is correct, everything that we have in our system is correct, because again, we're sending our outreach staff out into the field to conduct these interviews, and because of the language barrier, sometimes things can be misspelled, misinterpreted. So it's important that we lean on you all as well to get this information. That's the importance of making sure that this list is getting sent out and it's reoccurring and that we're all on the same page. And again, this process before, I'm not 100% sure if you were aware, it used to be a quarterly list. That's what it used to be called. But it's changed now to monthly because of the high mobility rate of our students. And also, the other important thing about it, our students qualify for free or reduced lunch. So in that email, that's why I stressed, hey, can we please make sure that we are communicating with our food services coordinators as well, so that they can then go ahead and mark them as migrants, so that then these students can receive the services or benefits of actually being a migrant student that they deserve. Again, due to the high mobility rate of our students, they may or may not be in your district, as I stated before. This is why we need 100% participation from our districts. I've sent out one in November and then another one in February. I want to say 2 lists were sent out. Probably from that, I probably had maybe 6 or 7 districts actually respond. And it's completely fine if you open a file and you see that I run this report and you see the same students that were in there last time. It's absolutely fine if those students are in there. We're just trying to make sure that we're touching bases, having their names spelled correctly, their birthdays are correct. And in addition to that, we also, any student that you have in Power School coded as migrant, please let us know. And that way we can go in and actually relay that list to our staff, our outreach staff. And then at that point, they'll go out and say, hey, ask them to conduct the interview, see if they qualify. And if they do, they'll receive a COE, because sometimes you might strike gold and accidentally code a student migrant and they might be migrant. So we just want to check all our boxes and make sure we're catching.
And district Title I Part C coordinators that are listed like that in DMs, who should they collaborate with to help make this so as easy as possible?
So to make this as easy as possible, it is important to coordinate with your Power School coordinator, your district technology coordinator. And as I've been doing this process, I've also found that depending on what district you're in, someone may be listed in DMs as the Title I Part C coordinator. And I've sent out emails like, hey, I'm not responsible for that. This is someone else. So we're trying to get an active and up-to-date directory for who would be responsible for fulfilling these duties for this particular process. And again, in order for us to get there, communication, relationship, and moving the needle, making sure that we're doing it and staying on top of communicating with each other. After distributing the list, I already said that. I'm not about to say that again. Where was I? I done lost where I was at. Okay. So we do have a web access coordinator. It's called the WAC. Internally, that's what we call it. They are responsible. They're not WAC at all, but they're responsible for updating the information in the NDMs to say, hey, this is who is here. And I skipped that. That was another reason why we had an issue. A lot of people that are still listed, they've retired. So I'm getting bounce back emails and I have no idea who to contact there. So if you know someone in your district that has retired and you receive an email from them, just let me know, remove them, or whatever the situation may be so that we can update that. Go ahead.
Sorry, just a quick question. I want to make sure I understand. I think I saw somewhere, you may have mentioned this. So the list that you're talking about that is coming to the district,
Mhm.
the person who's identified to receive it, that list will have, right, yep, there it was. Will only have the students who the State Department
Correct.
you've done the interview and they've given them a certificate. So, and I don't deal with Power School a lot other than telling our Power School department, hey, can you pull this from me? So, did I see somewhere that there are 2 places where our students can be identified? Is it lined up with the enrollment survey where they answer those 2 questions and that's how you pull students for the interviews? How does that
That
work?
is one way.
That's one way. Correct. So, yes. So the screen of questions that's on the enrollment survey, once they're entered in, I can then go into Power School, and basically we're looking for those that said yes to either one or the other.
Okay. So, and in Power School, it does have both of those questions, and so the Power School coordinators enter yes or no. And if it's yes for either of those, that's what signals the interview to happen.
Yeah, and in all honesty, and Brenda, you can probably even speak to it, but like the Ed5 change and the accountability or Power School system with moving to an Ed5 platform has made it a little challenging. We've had to over even the last year look at to constantly make sure it's still working essentially. But yes.
So when you all, and sorry for all the questions.
Oh, it's fine.
I'm not really new to it, but I feel like I'm missing some things. I talked to Zach about that yesterday. So when you coordinate those types of efforts to go out and conduct the interviews, do you coordinate with the school or do you coordinate with the district?
So with that, we actually, when we have the interviews done, our outreach staff, the report that I run, it contains the parents' names, phone number, addresses. We send them directly there, which it was a bit of a hurdle in the beginning because at first we were not storing phone numbers in Power School. So we had to go through the process of making sure that we could get the phone numbers, because if you think about it, we had thousands of records. Our state staff is not that large. They would literally have to drive to those addresses. So we were like, okay, the best thing to do is be able to capture those phone numbers. Being able to capture those phone numbers then allow us to cover more ground quickly.
So I'm from a charter school district, so we have 44 schools all over the state, and I have never been contacted, and schools have not said anything to me about it. So I felt like I was missing something somewhere that I was supposed to be doing but not doing. But that sounds great. You guys go directly to the families. Love it.
Yes. Yes.
So the best way for us to communicate with y'all in case the student leaves our district
Mhm.
is with an email, because that student will not leave the program in 3 years. Am I correct? Once they go in, they cannot, or unless their situation change.
Yeah, each time if they were to make another move, that would re-up the clock for another 3 years. But if they don't move, they stay in your district from the most recent whatever move that starts a 3-year clock. If they don't move after that, you would see their name drop from this monthly eligible list.
You will not know until you run those reports that they leave the district, right?
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
And normally we get requests, and we know where they are going to. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
And go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, I'm just trying to think through this and how it would impact us because of having schools located all over the state. If they leave one of our, because it's district to district, not necessarily school to
Right.
school, but
Yeah.
they could be in our district and be migrant and go from one of our charter schools in the Midlands to one of our charter schools in the upstate,
Right.
technically,
Yeah.
and they would still be considered migrant if they
Right.
fit those qualifications. So,
It's very true. And
um,
that's something I remember we were talking about that I wanted to reach out. I'm pretty sure the answer is going to be physical, like zoned physical school, school like where they are currently in terms of school residents. In terms instead of like public charter school being the district, and then there's no other district to move to because it's statewide.
it
In your
would be
case, right?
the district they're
But-
actually zoned from, and
Yeah.
then they move to
Exactly.
where they're now zoned.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's what I believe. That's what I want to check with our program officer on. Yeah. Yeah. Because we're not. And of course, we have other charter school authorizers too. Yeah, across the state. So, yeah. But there's. Well, James can talk to you about this, but the back. So you mentioned email, like sending us emails, which is great. Another way to communicate with kids that you might think that are possibly migrants, just re-uploading that information to the list that you sent to you through ADT. You can add fields of families you want us to follow up with, or data that you want us to look at for those students in the actual monthly list files, and that can go uploaded right back, securely in ADT.
Everyone is familiar with the ADT, correct? Okay, perfect. Because I came across that and it was like, I'm not seeing my folder or any of the, yep, you couldn't see your folder. And that is basically on a district level to be able to be granted access to that particular folder. I found that out too. Because I remember I submitted the ticket and I was like, hey, this is using the district, can't access this folder. And then it was like, yeah, they have to reach out to their district. And again, because responsibilities are different, one district may allow someone else to do a grant access and someone else of the other in a different district. But what you're looking at right now is actually the first tab of the Excel spreadsheet for the eligible student list. This tab contains all of the information that was either pulled from MIS 2000 and PowerSchool. Right now in this screenshot, what we're looking at, if the column starts with PS, it's PowerSchool. Of course, that's where it was pulled from. Then we have like the migrant student contact information. That's the contact information that's not already provided, basically like mother, father, address, etc. From there, the district contact person, that would basically be the person that is completing the process of identifying or rectifying the data for us. Once that is done and completed, you can give us a telephone number if I have any questions. I can reach out to you. So, and it also serves as another form of me updating our address book to say, hey, this is who's responsible for this district. So that's why completing that is important. And also changes to student data. All of these are drop downs. They're like you can click on it and it'll be a drop down to where you could select if there was any changes made, if there were changes made on your end that I need to make in our database to make sure that their name's spelled correctly, address, or whatever the situation may be. And then, of course, if the student is not enrolled in your district, you have the option of selecting that as well. And then this is tab 2. I had to block everything out for sake of PII. But this is an example of a file. These students were students that were eligible or are eligible for the program. As you can see, we do have the PowerSchool name here in this particular file. Later on in the file, or if you go, I think to the left a little bit more, you'll see that there's an MIS file. MIS data that we pull, which is our database that we house at the State Department. And again, that's where you would look and say, okay, I see in your database, you may have this spelled correctly, or they're listed at this school, but they're not at this school. You'll scroll down to the end and then make the changes and let me know, hey, this is what it should be.
Good. Let's see if you learn anything special there. It's a good question. It's good interaction. All right, so some true or false, okay? All right. Migrant students' eligibility is based on the U.S. school entry date in PowerSchool. True or false? Are you sure, didn't you? No, it's what is the U.S. school entry date in part tied to? What subgroup? Immigrant. Yeah, under Title III. Right. Very good. A certificate of eligibility approved. A COE approved by SCDE is required for identification of migrant students. True. Very good. Yep. And if you get those lists monthly, it means that we have that certificate on file. The Title I Part C coordinator listed in DMS receives the monthly eligible student list. True or false? Yep. True. And that can be edited by coordinating with your WAC Wow. Web access coordinator. All right. Once the eligible student list is received by the district, no further action is needed. False, right? What happens after you get it?
Free and reduce.
Yep, free and reduce, verify, reconcile.
Put it in power.
Definitely, code and Power School. Like, so identification, like our other subgroups, if it's not in Power School, they are not. Even though we're identifying at the state level, we're not changing. We don't have access to inter district data, right? So it's really important to market in migrant Power School locally.
Should we be getting a copy of the certificate of eligibility, or is that just totally without? Like, we shouldn't have access to those?
Well, I don't think you should receive them because it's stored specifically in our database. But I do know there are some instances where Victor or one of the outreach was like, "Hey James, can you print out a copy of the COE for me or email it to me because you needed to provide proof for what again? I can't remember.
Some districts use it as proof of residency if the family doesn't have like a utility bill or the rental contract in their name.
Can be provided.
Question about free and reduced lunch. If a school does not participate in the National School Lunch Program, are they required to provide free lunch if they use other options? Like, for example, they may have vendors come in and parents purchase items, or they have the option of bringing their lunch. We've run into that with quite a few of our schools that don't.
It's a really good question. I want to.
That is tough.
Sorry, I got out of the box
They're going to be
things.
categorically eligible for meals, but you're asking if the school doesn't participate in any USDA sanctioned type of meals. I have to might get back to you on that. Honestly, I would say if possible, I would say feed them. But yeah, categorically eligible.
Yeah, I just wondered like requirements because with homeless or foster care students,
Absolutely.
they also.
They're on that same memo, so I'm going to go ahead and say yes then because
Okay.
they're on that same memo that we're talking about.
So we don't, I don't think we are required, but we try to remove barriers to that. So I would like to know if they're required because we've encouraged our schools to make sure. But then with foster care or homeless, we have funding, so they can request funding from the district to pay for those meals if it's not coming from U.S. Department of Ed. I mean, you don't talk about that. But in this case where we don't have funding, how would we fund those that are not coming from the free you know what I'm talking about. Yes, yes.
Good question. Removal of barriers is always a good thing. So, but the actual answer I can come up with on that. So yeah. Vendor, did you have a question? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, yeah, that's our presentation. Does anyone else have any other questions? Or? Yeah.
The list.
Mhm.
That list only come out if we have qualifying kids in our area, or is that the overall?
So to provide a little bit more clarity, so we try to reach and find as many students that we can. Of course, we're not going to get 100% of everyone that is eligible for the program because it's very hard for us to do. But the list that you receive, those are the students that we have came in contact with, that we are aware of, that are eligible for the program, that basically they met all the criteria. So it's kind of, we're trying to do our best with identifying them. It would be amazing if we can get 100% of everyone in the district. But those that, if you do not receive a list, right, what that basically means is that we currently don't have any students that are eligible for the program for your district, which I do know Colleton, Charleston, Greenville, Beaufort, those counties are probably going to have someone eligible all the time. But not saying that others don't, but that's where a lot of our migrant students tend to be.
Now, we have some in our district that we try to just train them.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yes, that would work. And again, that doesn't, how can I say? Yeah. So if you think of, like, if they know of any student, like any students, like at the bottom of that file that show, you can list those students if you have the contact information, phone number, address, or anything. Add them at the. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So if any of those students, you can feel free to add them at the bottom of that Excel spreadsheet. And what I can then do is give it to them, and they can conduct it. And then if they qualify, probably have to give it a time. How long does it take the COE to get approved? Is there a specific timetable? But yeah, likely it's more than likely they might be in the next report if they are eligible.